Welcome to Days of Roar, a Detroit Tigers podcast brought to you by the Detroit Free Press. My name is Mark Gorash. I am here with Free Press beat writer Evan Petzold. After we have wrapped up a 162-game season for the Detroit Tigers, have won 86 games, and there will be more baseball played, Evan Petzold, on Tuesday, and they're a playoff team. So we've endured a lot of things, 26 weeks of regular season baseball, 6 weeks of spring training, and yet there's more. Thank God there's more, Ev.
It doesn't get any better than this. It's been 231 days since pitchers and catchers reported to spring training in Lakeland, Florida, where the Detroit Tigers run camp. And we are here on September 30th, heading into October with more baseball to be played. You are right. The Tigers clinched in Friday's 4-1 win over the Chicago White Sox at Comerica Park. Clinching a playoff berth snapped a 9-year drought. The White Sox, by the way, they set the record for the most losses in modern baseball history with 121. So that happened on Friday, as well as the Tigers clinching. The Tigers clinching a spot in the postseason is obviously the big news. Tigers finished with an 86-76 record, third place in the American League Central, best winning percentage for the Tigers since 2016, first time in the playoffs since 2014. Now, the Tigers lost on Saturday and Sunday to finish the regular season. The hangover game was real after a lot of partying on Friday night. And then the Tigers seemed pretty uninterested in Sunday's regular season finale. They lost 4-0 on Saturday, and they lost 9-5 on Sunday. The Tigers were going to play the Baltimore Orioles, but the Tigers slipped from the number 5 seed to the number 6 seed because they lost Sunday to the White Sox while the Kansas City Royals beat the Atlanta Braves. If the Tigers would have won, or if the Royals would have lost, the Tigers would be playing the Orioles. But instead, because the way it worked out on Sunday, the Tigers are playing against the Astros and the Royals are playing against the Orioles. So it's Detroit Tigers, Houston Astros, and the American League Wild Card Series. Those games being played Tuesday, Wednesday, and if necessary, Thursday. It's a best-of-3 series. I've been asked a lot, who would you rather play, Astros or Orioles? I think both teams are dangerous and have more talent on paper than the Tigers. The Orioles, I think, have a better all-around offense than the Astros, more length in their lineup, I would say. But the Astros have better pitching than the Orioles, so that's why I worry about them a little bit more. You need to score runs, no doubt about it. Like, to win the game, you have to score more than your opponent, but pitching matters so much more in the postseason, at least I think. And that's where the Astros, I feel like, have the advantage over the Orioles, making them a tougher team. But I also never liked the idea of the Tigers playing the Orioles for the 7th, 8th, and possibly 9th time since September 13th. The Orioles have already seen everyone in the Tigers bullpen multiple times, which would be concerning considering, the Tigers relievers, they kind of rely more on sequencing and shapes as opposed to overpowering stuff. So for me, it was always a toss-up. But I wonder if the Tigers like the Astros matchup better because they started Kenta Maeda on Sunday. So you can't tell me they were trying to win that game. I wonder if the Tigers like the Astros matchup. We might never know, but nonetheless, the Tigers are playing against the Houston Astros in the AL Wildcard Series, while the Royals are going to play against the Orioles. So we have 6 AL teams in the postseason. Number 1 seed, New York Yankees, and the number 2 seed, Cleveland Guardians, get byes to the AL Division Series. And in the Wildcard Series, it's number 4 Orioles versus number 5 Royals, and number 3 Astros versus number 6 Tigers. Winner of Tigers-Astros plays the Guardians. Winner of Orioles-Royals plays the Yankees. The wild cards are best-of-3 series. Tigers are playing all 3 games at Minute Maid Park in Houston. The third game will only be necessary if the Tigers and Astros split the first 2 games. We got Tarek Skubal versus Framber Valdez in Game 1, the battle of the left-handers. Mark, what do you think about this matchup, Tigers-Astros, and where are things going to be headed over the 3-game series?
Well, as far as who we play, the Mark Gorash saying, Days of Roar saying, I never really care who we play. I only care how we play. So we could read a lot into this, but I just think they need to play well. They can beat anyone who they play. So I don't read a lot into that. Look, Houston's been really good since the 1st of August. We'll get into that in a minute. They're 32-21. So they've been in the playoffs for 7 straight years. Baltimore has Corbin Burns, and Detroit did absolutely nothing in 14 innings of Corbin Burns. And with an 87% success rate when you win the first game of a series, I'm kind of happy we're avoiding Corbin Burns. I don't care if it's the 3rd time, the 4th time, the 8th time. We've done nothing with them. What makes you think that things would change? So, Framber Valdez, 7-2, 198 ERA since the All-Star break. Going to be no fun. Also throws left-handed. Not a good thing. So, my attitude is, let's go to Houston, play baseball. Got Tarek Skubal on the mound. Let's try to win game 1. It really changes the entire infrastructure and, odds of winning a series in a 3-game series when you win the first game. That's my attitude about it. Game time, 2:32 Eastern Standard Time. Heard a lot of whining about that, and I get it. It's in the middle of a work day. But hey, they used to play all the playoff games and the World Series games when I was a youngster, all in the afternoon. So I've seen a lot of people, yearn for the days when they played playoff games during the day, and now they're playing them during the day, and people are complaining about that. So, all right, let's get to question 1 of the big 2. Question 1 of the big 2 is real simple. The Tigers win a playoff series.
Of course the Tigers can win a playoff series. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that this Tigers team can win a playoff series. Will they win a playoff series? Who knows? That's the big question. I know you mentioned August 1st for the Astros and just how good they have been since then, but it's funny you mentioned that day because the Tigers actually have had a better record than the Astros since August 1st. The Tigers went 34-19, while the Astros went 32-21. Only 2 teams better than the Tigers were the Dodgers and the Padres. Actually, it's interesting. The Tigers and the Astros, they've been the best 2 teams in the American League since the July 30th trade deadline, which is when the Tigers traded Jack Flaherty, Andrew Chafin, Mark Canha, Carson Kelly. Only 3 AL teams were in the top 10 for the standings since August 1st. Tigers at 3, Astros at 4, and then Yankees at 10. The National League really dominated down the stretch. It was actually very fascinating. But can the Tigers get the job done? Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I know you mentioned the odds of winning the series when you win game 1. I actually dug up some different data, but kind of along the same lines. The winner of game 1 in a best-of-3 series wins 76% of the time, according to MLB.com senior data architect Tom Tango. But that research does not account for home field advantage, which obviously benefits the Astros. So you got anywhere between like a 75 to like an 85% chance of winning the series if you win game 1. Understanding the importance of game 1, I think the Tigers have the advantage because Skubal is MLB's best pitcher. He led the American League in wins, ERA, and strikeouts to win the pitching triple crown in the AL. But at the same time, Skubal had a 2.39 ERA and Framber Valdez had a 2.91 ERA. Tigers were just as successful in Skubal starts as the Astros were in Valdez starts. And on top of that, I think the Astros offense is stronger than the Tigers offense. And Skubal has no postseason experience whatsoever, whereas, Framber Valdez has pitched in 16, playoff games. How much does that factor in? Maybe it does. So I think game 1, as much as you want to lean Tigers' advantage because of Tarek Skubal, maybe it is more of a toss-up, even though Skubal is a better pitcher than Valdez. Either way, Skubal has to be at his best if the Tigers want to put the odds in their favor. I don't think the Tigers can afford to lose game 1. It really concerns me that they might. And that's the reason why I'm not sure that they're going to win a playoff series. But can they win a playoff series? Absolutely. 100%. They have the best pitcher in the world on the mound. So I can't say, no, the Tigers have no shot when they literally have the best pitcher in the world on the mound. You can't bet against Tarek Skubal. That's why I think there's definitely a chance, but we'll see if they pull it off.
Well, we are not sure if one of yours and my favorite hitters, Yordan Alvarez, will even play in this series. Sustained a knee injury. We'll talk to Chandler Rome, beat writer for The Athletic. and the Astros later in this show, and he'll detail what he knows about that. But if you ever talk about a team defying odds who has overcome what seemingly is everything, not in their favor from an offensive standpoint, and unpredictably has pitched their literal asses off since the All-Star break, it's the Detroit Tigers. Detroit has a number one bullpen ERA post All-Star break. Houston is 18-27 in one-run games, and that's like playing perfectly into the puppet master AJ Hinch's hands, because the Tigers are great in one-run games, and the Tigers are great at snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. Nobody plays dead for 6 innings better than the Detroit Tigers. Then all of a sudden you realize it's the 8th inning. You're now behind. Detroit needs to get 3 more outs, and you're done. And they've just done that so many times in the last 50 games. I've lost count. So trying to analyze series like this is all a bunch of fun. But the way the Tigers have played, they've defied every type of analysis known to man here these last 2 months of the season, Evan.
I love the fact that you brought up the one-run games, because I do think that that's very important. Like you mentioned, the Astros have an 18-27 record in one-run games. The Tigers, though, they played at MLB most 55 one-run games with a 31-24 record in those games. They've also won 13 of their last 15 one-run games. Not only does that speak to AJ Hinch and his ability to play the chess match and win the chess match with his moves, it also speaks to the players. Like, they have a never quit mentality. Like, that's how they play. They play their full 27 outs and more if they need to. And even if they're down in the late innings, they always believe they can come back and win. Like, that is something that every player on that roster across the board, they might be down by a run or two in the 8th inning, but that doesn't mean that they can't score a couple runs in the final 2 innings and end up on the winning side of a ball game. That's how they feel. That's how they play. And there's a belief there. There's a true belief there. And I think that that is going to really bode well for them in the playoffs, especially if they're in a close game with Houston, going into the final innings. But the one-run games, it really does matter. The Astros have a .400 winning percentage in one-run games. The Tigers have a .564 winning percentage in one-run games. .564 compared to .400. I'm taking the Tigers all day in those close games because they've been there, they've done that, and they've won.
You know the beauty of a 3-game series? You only got to win 2. So it's not like some big 3 out of 5, 4 out of 7. You just got to win 2 games. Get out of here. So I think weirdly, I can't wait to see what happens Tuesday night. Got Tarek Skubal on the bump. Anything can happen. That's for sure. All right, let's get to question 2, the big 2. What pixie dust made the Detroit Tigers go 31-11 and get to the magic number we discussed, which was 86 wins? You and I discussed the number they needed to get to make the playoffs. The number was 86. How many wins did the Detroit Tigers finish with, Evan Petzold?
They finished 86-76.
It's almost like we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, we think we know what we're talking about. I have no idea how they did it, though. So that's your question. I have no idea how they did this. Like, this is something that nobody saw coming, and there's no way you could have predicted this. Like, again, you go back to August 10th, 0.2% chance to make the postseason. And then we get to Friday, and they win 4-1 on Friday. They clinch. It's 100%. So it goes from 0.2 on August 10th to 100% as of Friday. I mean, it's just mind-blowing what the Tigers were able to do, going 31-11 in that stretch. And I know they lost the last 2 games of the season, but you go on a 31-11 run to clinch a spot in the postseason, and not just to clinch a spot, but to snap a 9-year playoff drought. Like, it's unfathomable what the Tigers did. And they did it all with selling at the trade deadline. Like, again, let's not forget, this is a Tigers team that their team ERA ranks first in MLB at 2.81 since the July 30th trade deadline, in which they traded starter Jack Flaherty to the Los Angeles Dodgers and reliever Andrew Chafin to the Texas Rangers. At the time, Andrew Chafin was the best reliever in the Tigers bullpen, aside from maybe Tyler Holton. But at the same time, in terms of a back-end reliever who could miss bats, Andrew Chafin was that guy. They traded him away. Jack Flaherty, he was a number 2 starter, and he is going to start game 1 for the Los Angeles Dodgers in the playoffs. And the Tigers traded him away. And they were able to somehow, some way, have the best results of any pitching stats in baseball while operating with 2 starters, Tarek Skubal and Kader Montero, in the rotation for more than a month. They relied on openers and bulk relievers, and they're still doing it to an extent, but they were doing it 3 out of every 5 games for more than a month, and it was working. The bullpen, it covered an MLB leading 28 2/3 innings in 52 games following the trade deadline with an MLB leading 2.63 ERA. The Tigers were supposed to fall apart at some point. If you look at the batting average on balls in play, fielding independent pitching, that's FIP, it's a statistic, expected FIP, like all signs pointed to the fact that these relievers were performing better than expected, better than they should have. But there's no denying the success that they had, and it was sustainable. They did it over 50 plus games. Tyler Holton, Sean Gunther, Jason Foley, Bo Brisky, Brennan Hannafy, Will Vest, Brant Herter, all 7 of those relievers had sub-3 ERAs in non-starter roles since the trade deadline. So yes, AJ Hinch is masterful at managing the bullpen to exploit matchup advantages. It's going to be interesting to see if guys like Sean Gunther, Brennan Hannafy, and Brant Herter can maintain their unexpected dominance in the biggest moments on the biggest stage at Minute Maid Park against the Astros. But that's how they got here. Yes, you have your horse in Tarek Skubal leading the way. But at the same time, it takes a collective group. And the Tigers were able to find that even with trading Jack Flaherty and trading Andrew Chafin. They were able to go to Toledo and find guys with 4, 5, 6, 7 ERAs and were able to optimize them to get the most out of them. So that's all Scott Harris, AJ Hinch coming up with that opener / bulk reliever plan. And then Chris Fetter, Robin Lund, Juan Nieves, optimizing them to the best of their abilities. And that's how the Tigers did it, man. Like if you're looking for the pixie dust, it's the pitching. Again, first in MLB with a 2.81 ERA since the July 30th trade deadline. It's all the pitching. That's how the Tigers did this.
Look, I've been pretty critical of a lot of things about what Scott Harris has done, but when it comes to the pitching, I got to tip my hat to the guy. It was a lot of his ideas, both in who he acquired and also about using the openers, trying to optimize and create handedness advantage, platoon advantage, and you got to tip your hat to the guy. As far as what happened offensively in the trade deadline discussion, yeah, I get the Jack Flaherty story. Yeah, I get that they sold. You had to sell. It would have been malpractice if you didn't sell. But at the same time, you got back Kerry Bonds Carpenter, somebody with a 964 OPS. You got back Riley Green, got him healthy, and I think he had like 27 RBIs in the month of September. You removed Javier Baez, who, as hard as he was playing, still had barely a 500 OPS, and replaced him with not the greatest hitting shortstop, but at least a shortstop that could contribute from time to time offensively. And you also removed Gio Urshela, who had stopped hitting. You got rid of Mark Canha, who had not hit at all for 2.5 months. So as much as you'd like to emphasize, the pitching came through, and that's really, the genesis of why they were able to win. You can't deny the fact that removing so many anemic hitters from their lineup, and then the infusion of Superman Parker Meadows, how many times he saved them offensively, defensively, on the bases, timely hitting, it all, when you stir it in a pot, you get a beautiful, beautiful meal. And that's essentially what happened. All right. So that we don't stay here all night, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to have one of our favorite guests of the year, somebody that is one of the best beat writers in America. And he just also happens to be Houston Astros beat writer, Chandler Rome from The Athletic. We'll be back with Chandler in 60.
All right, I'd like to welcome Chandler Rome, Houston Astros beat writer for The Athletic, to the Days of Roar podcast for the first time to help us break down the Tigers' opponent in the wild card series, the Houston Astros. Chandler, thanks for joining us.
What's up, guys? How are you?
Doing well. So, you know AJ Hinch very well. You covered him, covering the Houston Astros. Did you see any of this coming this year for the Tigers? It's interesting to ask outside perspectives. We've obviously been along for the ride. We've seen the 31-11 run that the team went on to clinch. But from the outside looking in, and with you knowing AJ Hinch, did you see any of this as possible? And what did you make of the run?
I have the utmost respect for AJ Hinch. I think he's one of the best managers in baseball. I thought that when the Tigers were terrible his first couple of years, when they were under 500, when they were scuffling, I still thought he was one of the best managers in baseball. I'll be quite frank with you. I know Riley Green. I know Tarek Skubal. I know Javi Baez. I probably couldn't name 5 more Tigers. I probably should get to know them pretty quickly here, but I think that in and of itself just tells you the job that AJ's done to get this collection of talent that is pretty unheralded, is pretty under the radar, to get them to believe in themselves and to get them to galvanize and go on this run after they sold at the deadline. I think that's the most, that is the most fascinating thing about all this, is that AJ Hinch was able to look at that clubhouse and look at that room after they traded Jack Flaherty, traded Mark Canha, traded Andrew Chafin, and look at that room and say, you know what, guys, we're still playing for something. That's a tough thing to do, to convince a clubhouse that just sold off 3 pretty respected veteran pieces that we're still in this and we still want to do something. That to me speaks volumes about what AJ's done. You guys know he's got a psychology degree from Stanford. This guy can really get into players' minds, maybe more than anybody in baseball I've ever met. And I'm not going to claim that I watch the Tigers day in and day out, but just watching and hearing and looking at what he's been able to do with this collection of talent, with a team that, I think you guys that watch him every day would probably agree, a team that's pretty limited. This is not some dynamic team that's got a bunch of superstars on it. They've got a couple guys that could turn into superstars, but this is not a loaded club by any stretch of the imagination. To extract every ounce of value out of this team, to do what he's done with the bullpen, with the openers, to manage his way to this point, it's an unbelievable accomplishment. And to be honest with you, if Stephen Vogt didn't win the Central in his first year as a manager, and if Matt Quatraro didn't take the Royals from 106 losses to the playoffs, AJ's probably the manager of the year. He'd probably get my vote, honestly. If I had a vote, he'd still get it from me. He's really good at this. And I knew when the Tigers hired him that, it may not show up right away, but he's so good at keeping a clubhouse together, at blocking out a lot of stuff that's gone on outside of the clubhouse. And players like him, players love playing for him. And I think that's something that gets overlooked nowadays. We look at a manager and we only look at bullpen decisions and lineup construction and when he pulls a starter, and we don't. That's nothing. The job of a modern manager is to keep a clubhouse intact, is to keep 26 different personalities in harmony, in together, in cohesive, and pulling on the same rope. And it's pretty obvious that he's done that and then some this year.
With AJ obviously coming back to Houston for this series, being back in the postseason for the first time since 2019. What do you think this means to him? He's talked about it a little bit, but what do you think going back to Houston for a 3-game wildcard series, kind of where things all began for him? Yes, I know, he was in Arizona there with the Diamondbacks, but his career as a manager really took off in Houston, and he did some amazing things there. And then there was the big fallout, the suspension. But for him coming back, what do you think about that, and how much is that going to mean to him?
He'll never say it publicly, but it means a good bit. I think he's really looking forward to this, because I think he, in his heart of hearts, and again, he will never say this publicly. He may acknowledge it if the Tigers win this wild card series, but I think there is some level of, I don't know if atonement's the right word, I don't know if redemption's the right word, but it's human nature, right? You're coming back to the place that fired you. Human nature is you want to show them kind of what you are and what you're made of. That's nothing to do with AJ Hinch. That in any situation, if this was me or you or I think anyone, we'd have that same natural human inkling to stick it to the man, if you would, to stick it to him, stick it to the team that fired you. And look, He's never told me that. He's never hinted at that at all. I still think he's got pretty good relationships with a lot of people in Houston, both in the Astros organization and away from the Astros organization. Both of his daughters went to high school in Houston. So, I mean, they've got like connections and roots there. So it's not just an Astros thing, but, I think there is a little bit of him that would like to come in here and end their season in advance and kind of stick his chest out a little bit and be able to beat his chest out a little bit and say, look, this is what I did. I can do it and I can move past everything that happened here and still be successful.
Who wouldn't? I mean, after the run he had in Houston, winning a World Series, the way things went down, I mean, AJ is a competitive guy. And for anyone that knows him, he's a good guy. He's a gentleman. So, but yeah, I think he would love to whip some Astros ass for a little redemption. All right, so let's jump into a little bit of the 2024 Astros. I'm going to assume that Valdez starts Tuesday, and is Kikuchi penciled in for Wednesday? Because anybody not starting two good left-handers against this Tigers lineup, I'd be kind of shocked.
Yeah, so Framber will start game one. That's official. Joe Espada announced that today before the matchup, before we even knew that they were going to play the Tigers. It's, they're between Hunter Brown, a Detroit guy, for game two, or Yusei Kikuchi for game two. Like you said, the Tigers, a lot of their best hitters are left-handed. They do struggle against left-handed pitching. I wouldn't be shocked to see Yusei Kikuchi pitching game two, but on the other hand, why would you not want to save a lefty starter for game three, perhaps, if your season's on the line? Send a lefty out against the Tigers with your season on the line. So they can't really go wrong. Hunter Brown has been incredible. He's got the third lowest ERA in baseball since May 5th. The only two pitchers ahead of him are Paul Skeens and Chris Sale. He's been unbelievable, and that would be obviously a writer's dream from a narrative standpoint. A Detroit kid that grew up in downtown Detroit, that went to Wayne State, pitching against the Tigers in the postseason, grew up idolizing Justin Verlander, idolizing Miguel Cabrera. That would be a really cool scene to see. So if you had to, my gut tells me that Hunter Brown will pitch game two, and they'll have, look, if things go wrong in games 1 and 2, and they've got a game 3 with their season on the line, they've got a really good left-handed starter to send out there. So, but Framber will go game one. That's the only thing we know for sure. And if they can elevate him, if they can see the sinker up, hit it the other way, you can have some success against him. If you make him field his position, he's one of the worst fielding pitchers in baseball, and he gets rattled when he doesn't make. I would not be shocked, and AJ knows this because AJ managed Framber, would not be shocked to see a couple bunts laid down, would not be shocked to see them get the running game going a little bit to try to frazzle him, because that's the way you get to Framber. You got to get in his head a little bit. You got to get him thinking a lot, got to get his mind moving a lot, because when he gets in a rhythm, he's really, really, really hard to hit.
Parker Meadows dropping down a couple bunts out of the 9-hole kind of makes some sense there. Then talking about the pitching, talks about AJ Hinch, obviously, going back to Houston, the other big storyline. Justin Verlander, a Tigers legend. Is he going to pitch in this series? Is he going to be on the World Series roster? Like what's kind of happened with his season, and where are the Astros at with him right now?
You're getting ahead of yourself, Evan. We're not in the World Series yet, but I don't think he's going to be he's definitely not pitching in this series. He pitched on Saturday against the Guardians. That would mean he's not on full rest until game 3 of this series. And as I wrote in a story the other day, like, a lot of clubs would love having a unanimous future Hall of Famer waiting in the wings to save their season. That's just not the situation here. Justin Verlander has been a shell of himself his last 8 starts. He has an 8.08 ERA since coming off of the injured list. It's just not there right now. So really the decision that they have for the wild card series is, do you waste a roster spot on Justin Verlander for sentimentality? Do you carry him for no other reason than he's Justin Verlander and we have to put him on the postseason roster? Because Joe Espada said on Saturday that they have not discussed at all pitching him out of the bullpen. He's made 527, I believe, regular season starts in the major leagues. He's pitched out of the bullpen once. This is not a guy that is conditioned or conducive to pitching out of the bullpen. And they have better options to use as long relief out of the bullpen, be it Ronel Blanco, Spencer Arrighetti, guys like that. So there is no place for Justin Verlander to pitch in this series. And if he's not going to pitch, I find it hard to believe that they put him on the roster. As difficult as that is to consider and think about, I just don't see a spot for him. And Justin Verlander, to his credit, has been pretty, he understands the situation. And he knows that, this has not been his best. He knows that he says he came back a little bit too early from his neck injury, tried to compensate on a couple things, and it just hasn't worked out for him. You never say never, but I'd be pretty surprised if he's even on this wild card roster.
All right, so let's jump a little bit into the Astros lineup. All the normal great hitters, all still there. Altuve, Bregman, Yordan, Tucker. Talk to us a little bit about Yordan. Injured? Is he going to play? And how healthy is Kyle Tucker? Because those are two monster bats.
So Yordan Alvarez is the big question mark right now. He sprained his knee last Sunday while trying to stretch a single into a double in a meaningless game against the Los Angeles Angels, which is ill-advised. Slid awkwardly into second base, sprained his knee. I will tell you this, there was a ton of concern within the organization. When they got to Cleveland for this final regular season series, there was a lot of concern within the organization that he wasn't going to be able to do anything in the wild card. They were going to have to leave him off the roster. And he has gotten to a point where that's no longer, where there's a lot more optimism now. I still don't think that they're sold. I don't think that they're sold that he's going to be able to contribute in this series, but they're planning on him taking some swings on Monday during the workout day at Minute Maid Park. They're going to see how he looks and then maybe make a decision after that. If he is on the roster, he is not going to be, I believe, at 100% capacity. Now, Yordan Alvarez at 60% is better than most of the league at 100%. So they'll take anything that he can give them, but this is not going to be a situation where I think he's at full strength. He may not even factor into it. And I do wonder too, if they carry him on the roster just to make AJ Hinch think a little bit, because as long as he is active on that roster, you have to think that he's available to hit at any point. And that's going to change a lot of AJ's decision-making on how to, if Alvarez isn't in the starting lineup, but he's on the roster, changes a lot of, how do you pitch the guys in front of him? How do you use your relievers? Because you always have that in the back of your mind. They could send Yordan Alvarez up there to hit. So long story short, he's not doing great, but he's doing better than I think they thought he was going to be doing. And then Kyle Tucker, he's recovered well from his fractured shin. The Astros tried to tell you for 2.5 months that it was just a deep bone bruise, when in fact he did fracture his shin when he fouled a ball off of his shin in June. So since coming back, he's got over 1,000 OPS and 77 plate appearances coming back. A lot of that is against the Los Angeles Angels, who to me are just as bad as the White Sox. So you kind of take that into its proper perspective. But if Yordan's not in the lineup, like Kyle Tucker's the guy you circle, is like, you don't let this guy beat you. Because you mentioned how this is kind of the same usual Astros lineup. They're doing some stuff this year that they haven't done in a long time. They have the second highest chase rate in all of baseball. Only the Miami Marlins had a higher chase rate than the Astros this year. And they're swinging 50% of the time. It's the second highest swing rate in baseball behind only the Marlins. So this is a team that has had the tendency to get itself out. They swing early in counts. They swing often. Now, I will say this, they swing at good pitches. It's just maybe they swing at pitchers' pitches instead of hitters' pitches. And so I'm thinking on Tuesday, if Tarek Skubal's around the strike zone, he can get them. This is a lineup that I have seen allow starters to get in the 5th or the 6th inning at only around 55 or 60 pitches. This is a lineup that you can be economical against. If you're around the strike zone and you attack this lineup and you know how you're attacking it, this lineup can get itself out. Now, look, there's still some great hitters in this lineup, but this is not maybe the lineup that you're accustomed to seeing the Astros roll out there during this golden era. A lot of different stuff this year, just a lot of wayward approaches. Jose Altuve is chasing like 40% this year. This is his first season ever in his big league career with 100 strikeouts. Alex Bregman's walk rate has plummeted to about 7%. The bottom third of their order is on a given day not very good. So this is a lineup that can be pitched. And that's, I think, the Tigers' biggest hope here, is that they're pitching, Skubal in game 1 and then AJ doing his work, AJ and Chris Fetter doing their work with the bullpen in games 2 and 3, that they just hope that they can keep them down, because this is a lineup that, like I said, you make your pitches and you know how you're attacking them, this is a lineup that can get easy to navigate.
Tarik Skubal right there at the top in the big leagues at throwing first pitch strikes. That'll be interesting to see the approach from the Astros against a guy like Tarik Skubal who loves to fill up the strike zone early. Chandler, what can you tell us about Alex Bregman, the season that he's had? A slow start. Seems like maybe he's been pretty good as of late. And then any chance you think he's a Tiger next year?
He has the showcase right now. This is his showcase to show Scott Harris, and AJ Hinch knows what Alex Bregman brings to the table. Maybe Scott Harris needs an in-person look at it, but look, Alex Bregman has become the unquestioned leader of this team to the point where he is helping out in game planning meetings with the pitchers. You'll see on Tuesday, the first mound visit they have with Fromber, Alex Bregman will be the first person there because he's the one dictating a lot of what's going on here. This sounds so cliche, but it's the only way I can describe him. He's just a winner. Like he brings something to that clubhouse, brings an edge, just is a winning player. And like you said, he's going to go into free agency this winter and he's going to have his pick of teams. He is going to be the best third baseman on the market. You can debate whether he's going to be the second best position player on the market behind Juan Soto. Depends on how you feel about Willy Adames or Pete Alonso. But, the floor has been set for his contract with Matt Chapman's extension, 6 years, $151 million. Also negotiated by Scott Boras, who represents Alex Bregman. Alex Bregman is a year younger than Matt Chapman. He's a better offensive player. He's got playoff pedigree that Matt Chapman doesn't have. Matt Chapman's obviously the better defender, but it's going to take more than that. It's going to take more than 6 years. It's going to take more than $151 million to get him. But as far as his season goes, and you guys will see this if or when he signs with the Tigers, he is a notoriously slow starter. Like every year in his big league career, you can time it like clockwork. He starts slow every year. This one was more pronounced and a little bit longer than usual, and it also coincided with the Astros starting 12-24. So nothing's really changed. It's just one of those things you just have to kind of let him get going. Like I did mention, his walk rate's down. That's the one thing when you look at him, he's always a big on-base threat. He's going to get on base in some capacity. He's going to swing at strikes. He's not going to swing at balls. Has some of the greatest plate discipline in baseball. The walk rate's plummeted a little bit. I don't know if that's because this is his walk year and he's looking to maybe put up more OPS, more offensive numbers, more slug. I'm not sure, but he is kind of falling in line with, like I said, the rest of this lineup that they swing a lot. They swing early in counts. He's fallen into that a little bit, but he's gotten better. But I mean, since the beginning of June, there's not been 6 players in the big leagues better than him from a WAR perspective. And he's the engine that makes this thing go. And he's their unquestioned leader. And, this probably will be, honestly, his last playoff run with the Astros. And they hope to finish it with a World Series, but who knows? But he is the epitome of a winner. And I don't know how to explain it much more than that this dude just, all he does is he's a competitor and just knows how to win.
Sounds like a perfect fit for the Tigers next year. But look, we talked about Alex Bregman, Yordan Alvarez, Kyle Tucker. Obviously, we know about Jose Altuve. Who else is there to know about in this Astros lineup that could make an impact in this 3-game series?
Yainer Diaz, their catcher. This is his first year as a full-time catcher. He ended the season hitting .299. Was going to play today to try to get himself up to 300, and they were going to pull him out of the game so he could hit 300. But instead, he's at .299. Just an incredible bat-to-ball guy. Has a ton of power. Does it with very little effort. But he is like a lot of this lineup. If you expand the strike zone, he will chase. Because he's got such good bat-to-ball skills. He thinks he can get he thinks he can get the barrel to anything. Doesn't always work a lot. And I think the thing I'm interested to see with Yainer, when situations get big with him, when the pressure's on, when the spotlight's on, he does tend to swing out of his shoes. He tends to be a little bit aggressive. He tends to get himself out. And I'll be interested to see in this postseason kind of how he adapts to that. While Kyle Tucker was out for 3 months, they hit Yainer Diaz behind Yordan Alvarez basically the whole time. And pitchers just stopped pitching to Alvarez because why would you pitch to Yordan Alvarez in a lineup that doesn't have Kyle Tucker in it? And hitting behind him, he ascended and became I believe he had the 3rd highest batting average with runners in scoring position this season of any qualified big leaguer. So he's able to kind of minimize the moment a little bit, but be interesting to see when the pressure's on and kind of when, if the game's in his hands, it'd be very interesting to see kind of how he proceeds to play. But he's a dynamic, dangerous threat at the top of that order. And then I think another thing to maybe look at with this team, and I haven't looked at the metrics for the Tigers, so I don't know how good they are at this, but the Astros have not been a good defensive team all year. Jeremy Pena's had a rough season defensively at shortstop. Jose Altuve is one of the worst the worst defensive second baseman in baseball. They've been a black hole at first base all year. Alex Bregman's going to win the Gold Glove at third base, but other than that, they have not been great. So if the Tigers can put the ball in play and make the Astros field it, that could help a little bit. I'll be interested to see if what we saw this season was just, some fatigue, just some going through the motions at times, and whether they turn it on and lock it in the postseason, or whether this is going to be something that harms them, because this has not been a good defensive team all year. They weren't a good defensive team last year, and it's a lot of the same guys back. So those are the two things that really kind of I'll be looking for.
All right. So before we get out of here, Astros have had a notoriously good bullpen for many years. You have Josh Hader closing now. Abreu's still there. Presley's still there. So tell us a little bit about who's going to finish the games. Most of these Tiger games end up being a battle of the bullpen. The Tigers have the number one bullpen post All-Star break in ERA. So tell me a little bit about what Houston's bringing to the table.
Yeah, those three guys you just mentioned are the guys that they want the ball in their hands when the game's on the line. They don't want it in anyone else's hands, because no one really outside of those three guys, Brian Abreu, Ryan Presley, and Josh Hader, have inspired much confidence down the stretch. They got Hector Neris back when the Cubs DFA'd him. He's been okay. Taylor Scott was a guy, he was a revelation for him in the first half of the year, really fell off in the second half. He's injured now. They think he's going to be ready in time to be on the wild card roster, but he wasn't good before that. I think you'll see Spencer Arrighetti, their fifth starter, probably go into the bullpen. He's got a ton of swing and miss stuff. Maybe they use him. Maybe they use Ronel Blanco, their fourth starter, out of the bullpen. Ronel Blanco, who finished the season with the lowest opponent's batting average of any pitcher in baseball, any qualified starter in baseball. Maybe you see him out of the bullpen, see his velo tick up a little bit. But no, make no mistake, if they get into the seventh inning with a lead, they're giving the ball to Brian Abreu, then Ryan Presley, then Josh Hader. They have the most expensive bullpen in baseball, and by and large, it's performed. Josh Hader is giving up more home runs this season than any point in his career. But, it's kind of funny. He's a $95 million closer, and you expect $95 million closers to just be automatic. You expect them to be Emmanuel Clase with the Guardians. He hasn't been Clase. He's got an ERA around 3. His home runs have come at really inopportune times, but by and large, he's been really, really good for them. Brian Abreu made more appearances than any relief pitcher in baseball this year. You wonder about fatigue with him. You wonder how much they're going to be able to manage him in the playoffs. And then, Ryan Presley's got, I believe he's allowed 1 earned run in his last 24 postseason innings. So this is a guy that rises to the occasion in the postseason. So I'd probably, I think the Tigers are pitching better right now. Their bullpen, as we speak, is pitching better than the Astros, but you look at the track record, you look at just kind of what the back end of this Astros bullpen has done in October before, and I wouldn't bet against them, but it's not as if when you turn the ball over to your back end guys that the game is over. They have not been as automatic maybe as their price tag suggests, or maybe some of their stats suggest.
Bringing it back to AJ Hinch before we get out of here, he's spoken very, very highly about Joe Espada. What can you tell me about Joe Espada as a manager, how he kept the group together even amid the slow start, and kind of what do we expect from him in terms of in-game moves? Is he going to play the chess match with AJ Hinch, or does he have a different style?
Oh, he'll definitely play the chess match. This is not Dusty Baker, Dusty Baker was a lot more passive, didn't love pinch hitting, trusted his veterans, trusted his everyday guys. I would not be surprised if you see Joe Espada start making moves in the 5th or 6th inning. This is going to be, he's real into the chess match. He's real into thinking ahead. And, I think Joe and AJ are a lot alike. They were drafted within a round of each other by the A's in 96. Joe went in the 2nd round. AJ went in the 3rd round. They were teammates in the A's minor league system. They've been friends for a while. They both love red wine. They're big red wine drinkers, big connoisseurs, but they're a lot alike in a lot of different ways. And I think the one big thing for me is they're just composure. How the next time you see AJ Hinch flipping a table or being irate in public will be the first. Same thing with Joe. Joe, behind closed doors, Joe may get into guys, may yell a little bit, may get a little hot and bothered, but you'll never see it outside. You'll never see it in public. And, this team started 12-24. And one of the things that they credited was just that Joe Espada was just the same guy. Like he inside, I mean, he told me this after they clinched the division, he didn't feel that inside, the pressure was on inside. He had 100 things going through his mind, but he never let that bleed over into who he was at the field or in the clubhouse. And I think that really helped. And I think AJ, there's a lot of similarities there. AJ's the same guy. I mean, you guys have covered him through when Detroit was awful to where it is now. He was the same guy when this team was losing 80, 90 games as to probably he is now. So Joe, there's a lot of similarities there. It'll be interesting though. This will be Joe's first postseason in the manager's chair. Obviously he's been the bench coach here for 6 years. He's been privy to all this. He's been in these games, but he's not the one making the decisions. And, one thing he said today when we were talking about it was, AJ's been in this ballpark with that energy going, with things running, and he's used to that. That's not something that Joe's used to. I don't think the game's going to speed up on Joe, but it's certainly something that he's going to have to navigate. There's a first time for everything. And this is going to be his first time running the show and on the sport's biggest stage. And I think he's prepared for it, but, I think AJ's helped him with that. I mean, AJ's one of Joe's mentors. Joe has said that before. Joe's worked for a lot of veteran managers, and AJ being one of them that's really helped him out through a lot of stuff. So that'll be a fascinating little subplot to see is kind of how their chess moves go hand in hand. And the fact that Joe knows that AJ knows a lot about this Astros team, knows a lot of their inner workings, knows how they strategize, knows their models, knows a lot of stuff. So there's going to be maybe even some more guarded and some more, intrigue as to how, they combat that. So it'll be fascinating to watch.
AJ Hinch versus Joe Espada, Tarek Skubal versus Framber Valdez, Detroit Tigers versus Houston Astros. Cannot wait. All right, Chandler, that's all we have for you. But thanks for helping us learn more about the Astros ahead of the Wild Card Series. It was great to have you on the podcast, man. You were just incredible.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it. Everyone, that was Chandler Rome, the Houston Astros beat writer for The Athletic. There's more to discuss about the Wild Card Series, but first, let's take a break.
All right, we're back. Hope everyone loved Chandler Rome. I mean, you can't just get any more information about the Houston Astros than you can from him. He is just so good at what he does. All right, Ev, it's time to do something you and I both hate doing. But we're going to actually both make a prediction on what we think is going to happen in the series. So we could rock, paper, scissors for this, or I'm just going to defer to you because I just think it's our show, but it's really your show more than mine. You tell me what you think.
Only one player on the Tigers' expected wildcard roster has postseason experience. That's Matt Vierling. The Astros, though, they've been to the postseason 8 years in a row with many of the same players, reaching the World Series many times. If experience matters, the Astros hold a massive advantage over the Tigers, even though the Tigers come into the series as one of the hottest teams in baseball, winning 31 of their final 44 games. But again, like we talked about, don't forget that the Astros posted the best record among all AL teams since April 27th at 81-54. Astros have been a really good team for a really long time. They started extremely slow, but they've climbed out of it. And when they climbed out of it, they climbed out of it and came to play ball. And they've done that all season long, especially going back to late April. So the Tigers won't stop believing. That's been their thing. They're going to believe. They're going to play their 27 outs. They're going to be gritty Tigers, as they've liked to say and as the fans have liked to say. But I think losing game one with Tarek Skubal on the mound, I think that could crush the vibes. And that's what I worry about in game one with a lot of these guys playing almost all these guys playing in their first postseason game. I wonder if the moment gets to them in game one and that throws the train off the tracks. I don't think it's any reason to worry if the Tigers lose game one and then, eventually lose the series. I think the Tigers are going to be back in the playoffs for years to come. I like this group. I like what they have. I think this is a team that if they add more pieces, maybe Alex Bregman, they can be a team that gets back to the postseason year after year after year and can try to build an Astros-like dynasty. So I think that, look, it might not work out this year, and I don't have the Tigers predicted to win. I think the Astros are going to win the first 2 games in the series, and then it's going to be over. But I think the Tigers are really have something going here, and that's something to be really excited about. Another thing, too, is for the series, and Chandler had actually talked about this, if the Tigers could find a way to put the ball in play and maybe exploit the weaknesses of the Astros defense. I'm not so sure that's going to be the case. Like, the Tigers ranked 20th in swing and miss rate across the entire regular season. Since the trade deadline, the Tigers ranked 24th in whiff rate, so their batters are swinging and missing quite a bit, especially since the deadline. Highest whiff rate since the trade deadline. You got Justin Henry Malloy, Kerry Carpenter, Jake Rogers, Trey Sweeney, and Jace Young all over 30%. Then you have Parker Meadows, Wenzel Perez, Spencer Torkelson, Cole Keith, Riley Green, and Dylan Dingler in that 24 to 28% whiff rate range, with Parker Meadows at 24%, Riley Green, Dylan Dingler at 28%. Matt Vierling, Zach McKinstry, they're going to put the ball in play the most. Matt Vierling has an 18% whiff rate since the trade deadline. McKinstry checks in at 16%. Those 2 guys will put the ball in play. That's why I really like Matt Vierling in this series specifically, especially against the left-handers, Yusei Kikuchi and Framber Valdez. I mentioned Kikuchi and Valdez. I'm worried about the Astros pitching. You got Valdez, Kikuchi as 2 big lefties that are going to start games. You got Hunter Brown, who's been an absolute monster. Those guys are all studs, starting pitchers. 2 of them are left-handers. Tigers lineup versus left-handers is not very strong. Look at what they rolled out on Friday against Garrett Crochet, the White Sox ace. Justin Henry Malloy was batting cleanup in that game. I don't know how I feel about Justin Henry Malloy batting cleanup in playoff games against Framber Valdez and Yusei Kikuchi. So that's where I'm at in that sense. And then the bullpen for the Astros, Josh Hader, Ryan Presley, Brian Abreu, plus you got Ronel Blanco, Spencer Aaron Getty available out of the bullpen despite being starters. That's a lot of firepower coming at you from a pitching staff standpoint. And that's where I'm a little bit worried about the Tigers being able to hold up in this series, especially if they can't win game one. If they can't win game one with their ace on the mound, I think it's going to fall to the wayside. But again, I think the Tigers are going to be back in the playoffs for years to come. But my pick, Astros win 2-0.
So logic tells me when I look at the Astros pitching, and man, do they have a lot of pitching. Holy smokes, do they have a lot of pitching. And it's not just ordinary pitching. It's really, really good pitching. So my heart tells me that the Tigers score 1 run in game 1 and 1 run in game 2 and get swept 2-0. However, my intuition tells me, and intuition is everything when it comes to gambling, that Tarek Skubal dominates. Tigers beat the Astros in game 1. Astros look shaky like the Tigers did against the Orioles the last time they were in the playoffs. Should have been a huge favorite. Ended up getting swept. Didn't know what happened to them. And the Tigers sweep the Houston Astros in Houston 2-0. And the fairy tale continues. So there's the logic, and then there's the gut. I'm going with the gut. 2-0 Tigers. So, that's it. All right. We got a little story to tell you. And Ev never likes talking about himself, his personal life, or whatever. But I actually think, as sad as some of this is, at the same time, it's hilariously funny. At least
it's dark humor.
Well, at least when he told it to me. So Evan Petzold is not going to be in Houston for these playoff games. And Ev explained to all the loyal listeners of Days of Roar why you're not going to be in Houston.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so long story short, I'm going to be in Greece, 3 islands on Greece from October 2nd through the 18th. So if you happen to be in Greece, either in Santorini, Milos, or Crete, reach out to me and maybe we can link up in Greece. But yeah, I booked my honeymoon, and I booked my honeymoon on August 10th when the Tigers had a 0.2% chance of making the postseason. The long story to that is got married on September 8th in 2023. So we just celebrated our first anniversary. But when we got married, we decided that we'd push back our honeymoon because we were trying to buy a house. Now, going into the baseball season, we decided we're going to do one of two things. We're either going to book the honeymoon for October, or we're going to book the honeymoon for next May. But as my wife and I were talking about it, we said, okay, we got to wait though. We got to wait until we know the Tigers are not going to make the postseason, and then we can book our honeymoon for October if we're going to book it in October. If it looks like the Tigers are going to go to the postseason and be playing in October, well, then we'll just book it for next May. And I kid you not, August 10th was the date. I have the receipts. I have shown them to many people. They exist. I may or may not post them on X, formerly known as Twitter. Not sure about that yet, but I may if needed. So there is proof. But yes, on August 10th, we booked everything. We booked flights. We booked hotel. We booked Airbnb. We booked rental car in Crete because Crete's a bigger island. We booked catamarans in Santorini. We literally booked everything for this trip, all on August 10th. And then obviously right after that, August 11th is when the Tigers started their 31-11 run. So if I had anything to do with that by booking my honeymoon that I pushed back by a year, I guess you can give me some credit for it. But it's kind of crazy how it all turned out, especially when you consider the fact that it was the 0.2% chance when we booked it. And it's interesting too, all right? I got to throw the other beat writers under the bus a little bit because I was walking into the clubhouse every day. And this was we're talking 3 weeks before I booked it. And I would ask these guys, I'd say, hey, Cody, Chris, Jason, Evan, that's Cody Stavenhagen, Chris McCoskey, Evan Woodbury, Jason Beck. I'd ask him, I'd say, hey, you guys, I got to book this honeymoon. You think I should book it yet or no? You think I should book it? And everyone goes, dude, the Tigers aren't making the playoffs. Book your honeymoon, make your wife happy, make yourself happy, enjoy yourselves. Enjoy your vacation. The Tigers are not going to be playing baseball in October. And I was like, okay, well, I'm a little hesitant. So maybe I'll wait a few more days. And then a few more days would go by and I'd be back in the clubhouse, with these guys. And I'd ask the same question. Hey, I think I should book it. And I think they got sick and tired of hearing me ask over and over again because I was so worried the Tigers might make the playoffs, but they said I should book it. And well, Chris McCoskey, I did it. And Cody Stavenhagen, I did it. And, Jason Beck, I did it. Evan Woodbury, I did it. You guys all told me that I should, and I did it. So I blame you. I'm just kidding about that. But yeah, it's interesting how it worked out. And then, as kind of the season's going along and their Tigers are on this crazy run, I'm going back in there and I'm saying, you guys, they might make the postseason. And I got McCoskey and Stavenhagen telling me, no, they're not going to make it. This thing isn't going to last. This thing isn't going to last. It's going to die out. And sure enough, it never died out. So yeah, catch me in Greece, October 2nd to the 18th. And I'll catch up with everybody in the ALCS. Don't worry. I'll be there for the ALCS. I'll be there for the World Series, but you're going to have to live without me for a little bit.
Well, all I can say is you only had to cover 162 baseball games. And
don't forget about spring training.
And spring training. And then they made the playoffs. And look, the good news is you're going to Greece with Savannah Petzold. It's hard for me to feel really bad for you. Okay. So it sounds like an amazing trip, but I needed everybody to hear the full story. And I needed everybody to understand that you were also encouraged to book the trip by the other four beat writers.
I think it was sabotage. I don't think they want me on the beat. I think it was sabotage. No, seriously, no one saw this coming. But it's going to be, dude, it's a trip of a lifetime, man. We're going to have an awesome time. We've been looking forward to this from long before we got married. This is something that we wanted to do, and especially to try to do it before we have kids. It's just the perfect time for us to do it now. So we can't wait. We're really excited. It sucks that the circumstances worked out this way. And that was something that my gosh, by nature, I worry a ton. I am a worrier. And so I've spent the whole last month of my life, absolutely worried about what's all going to happen. And are the Tigers going to make it? And are they not going to make it? And sure enough, they made it. And now I'm at peace with everything. And man, we're going to have a blast of a trip in Greece, and I'll be checking in. I won't be paying too close of attention because, I got more important things to worry about. But yeah, I'll keep tabs on my phone. I'll make sure I'm checking to see what's going on.
All right. Now you've heard it broken down from the inside why Evan Petzold will not be in Houston on Tuesday. All right. We would be remiss after a season of 162 games plus spring training not giving a shout out to all the people that listen to Days of Roar. And there's a lot of people that listen to Days of Roar, shockingly enough, to both Evan and myself. And we want to thank all you guys because we hear from you. We, get questions from you. We get interactions on social media. We, just want to really thank you for taking an hour out of your week every week and listening to two guys discuss what for a long time was a weirdly unsuccessful baseball team until it became an unbelievably successful baseball team. So hat tip to all our fans, and we really appreciate your loyalty and the fact that you find it entertaining to devote an hour of your week to listening to what we might have to say about baseball.
And I'd love to double down on that really quick, if you don't mind. Like, if you could please rate and review the show, that would be awesome. We would really appreciate that. The more 5-star ratings we get, the more reviews that we get, even if it's negative things about Mark, that's good for us. Like, that's good for us. And it, shows our bosses that, we're getting the interaction, both with the numbers of listeners, because we obviously can see that, but also too, just like the interaction with you guys from a rating and review standpoint. So if you hadn't done that yet, please do that wherever you listen to podcasts. It'd be greatly appreciated.
I just want to remind all of you people that are so mean to me on both social media and in reviews that I am a beautiful, beautiful little 3-year-old boy's papa. Okay. And he sees me in YouTube shorts and says that's his papa on the TV. So if you're going to be mean to me, I want you to think about a little beautiful 3-year-old boy with beautiful hair and a big smile and a tiger drawn on his face who you are being mean to his grandfather. I just want
Mark, you do realize he's going to go on the internet like a few years from now and he's going to be like, oh my gosh, they hate him. So we need some nicer reviews so Mark can get a little more love.
All right. Ed needs to finish writing about 13 articles before he gets on the plane for Greece. He needs to dust off his passport, and we need to get out of here. So I want to remind everybody it's been a hell of a fun season. We're going to win some playoff games. I want to remind everybody, as I've said, please rate, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to any of the podcasts you can listen to, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, who knows. You can always find us embedded in every Evan Petzold article at thefreak.com. I'd like to thank the Free Press editor, Nicole Avery Nichols, the greatest producer in America, the Magic Man, Robin Chan. Love to Braden Michael Gorash and my son, Yordan Gorash. Shout out to the spectacular Savannah Petzold, who is about to go on her honeymoon. Until next week, when I will have a special guest, Days of Roar, to talk to me while Evan is eating dinner in Santorini, I'd like to tell everybody, peace.